Hello, habari, bonjour, salam. Welcome to the Africa Power Hour. I'm your host, Nadia Abdalla, an impact-driven leader, a Pan-African, and a mental health advocate. The Africa Power Hour is a Pan-African visual storytelling network where we talk about young and vibrant Africans in Africa and around the world who are creating great things and are creating great impact. Now, on today's episode, we are going to look into youth leadership and empowerment in refugee communities. And I'm so excited to have one of my friends with me here, Nhial Deng. And just a bit about him: he's a South Sudanese refugee, a storyteller, and a youth advocate who spent 11 years in Kakuma Refugee Camp. Now, Nhial has been a driving force behind initiatives like Refugee Youth Peace Ambassador and SheLeads Kakuma. He empowers young people through education and social entrepreneurship, and now he's studying global studies and communication at Huron University. Now, he really continues advocating for refugees, peace, and climate justice on a global scale. Now, I don't want to say much about him because I'd like to give him an opportunity to introduce himself and really tell us about who he is, what he does, and what's that one unique element of him. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Nadia, for having me. It's so good to be part of this conversation, and again, for all the great work you do to uplift African voices. Hello everyone, very good to be with you all this morning. My name is Nhial Deng. As Nadia mentioned, I'm a South Sudanese refugee, a youth advocate, I'm a storyteller, and a community activist and organizer. I grew up in Kakuma Refugee Camp in Kenya. I feel like Kenya is home to me. I started my community work in Kakuma Refugee Camp when I was in high school with Refugee Peace Ambassadors, a community led initiative for young people in the refugee camp to build their leadership skills, as well as SheLeads Kakuma, a leadership mentorship and advocacy program focused on young women and girls in the refugee camp. And beside those initiatives, I'm a student myself. I go to college in Canada at Huron University. And I'm also an advocate on the global scale, engaging with world leaders on different issues with a focus on refugees, gender equality, climate justice, and youth leadership.
Nice. As you can see, Nhial has a lot under his hat. And today I wanted to have this conversation, and I want us to start on a personal journey and storytelling. So you've spent 11 years in Kakuma Refugee Camp.
Yep.
Can you share your personal journey and what motivated you to become a youth advocate and a storyteller?
Yeah, I think it started from when I was a kid. So growing up, my dad used to have a small radio, and I would listen to the news with him, and I was just captivated by the news broadcasters. And I remember one of my dreams as a kid was to be a journalist. And my dad told me I need to go to school, learn good English, and go to the UK and work for BBC. That's all I wanted to do. But I think through his stories, I learned a lot about my community. My dad taught me a lot about South Sudan, given that I was growing up and I was born in Ethiopia. And he wanted me to have a sense of belonging to South Sudan as a country, but also to my community, to know about my cultural heritage and where I was from. And I think those stories taught me not just about my community, but even about the world outside. I remember, listening to BBC News as a kid, and I learned about issues happening all around the world. And I felt that these stories, helped me connect with myself, with my surrounding, with the people around me. And it was a way of learning about the world. So when conflict affected my community in 2010 and I had to flee to Kakuma Refugee Camp, it was the stories that helped me first connect with young people in the refugee camp. Learning about their journeys, how they arrive in Kakuma Refugee Camp, what are the challenges they are facing in the camp, sort of motivate and inspire me to start my community leadership work. And that is how it all started. So I remember one day in my high school, I had a few friends, can we have a community gathering today? We would talk about our stories, we talk about our hope, we talk about the challenges we face, and we talk about what we can do. And that was the first meeting of the Refugee Peace Ambassadors. And then, that later expanded to the wider community, and then it became what it is today.
Nice. And I want us to go into education, peace building and leadership. How has your experience in the refugee camp shaped your view on that?
I think very much. I remember arriving in Kakuma Refugee Camp, just like many other people who have to flee conflict and go to refugee camps or other, humanitarian contexts. I think for many kids, the first thing that comes to their mind is education, because when you arrive in the refugee camp, you often come with so much trauma. You get there very devastated. And education is the only thing that gives you hope, because through education you can feel that your dreams as a kid are still, valid and can still become a reality. It's through education that gives you that safe space where you can heal from your trauma, and you can just sit down as a kid, be happy, and think about a glowing future again. So education, I think for me, was that one ticket to a brighter future. And peace building was an important component of that, because, one of the main reasons that people across Africa and around the world have to flee their home is often because of conflict, especially armed conflict. And I believe that, ensuring that young people, especially in a continent like Africa that have, one of the world largest demographic of young people, have these skills and tools to promote peace is very important. Because at the end of the day, young people, play a critical role in conflict. They can be perpetrators, but at the same time, well, they can, put in so much effort toward building peace. So I think those two became keys in the entire leadership work I was doing, but also in my personal journey as well. I believe that first I need to develop myself as a person, and that was education. But then I need to become a peace builder in my community, and that's how those two sort of intersect and also shape how I see the world, how I see my community, Africa, and also how I interact with young people in my community.
Nice, and that's very powerful. And I'm sure from that experience and everything, it's now got you to be the leader that you are today, which is what I want to go into, which is a bit of your leadership initiatives. In Kakuma, you initiated a project, Refugee Youth Peace Ambassador, and SheLeads Kakuma. So what impact have these had on the young refugees in the camp?
Yeah, I think one of the main challenges that young people face in conflict-affected zone or even humanitarian, protracted situation like Kakuma is that they do not have a space where they can just play, where they can just be happy, where they can learn, where they can heal. And, when I started the Refugee Peace Ambassadors, it was to provide an outlet for young people in my high school, Kakuma Refugee Secondary School, to have a safe space where they can heal from their trauma, where they can have, some sort of peer support group. You can talk to a young person from, Somalia or from DRC or from Uganda or from Ethiopia who have faced similar challenges like you and who you can learn a lot from. So that was just, what Refugee Peace Ambassadors does, providing that powerful outlet for young people, to be able to heal, to be happy, to be able to learn together. And over the years, we've been able to work with thousands and thousands of young people. I think by the end of last year, we've reached over 20,000 young people collectively, that have either get involved in game and sport activities, that, have undergone through our peace building training or through our leadership workshops or through our mentorship programming. Mentorship was also a very important component of that initiative, because it was, creating a space for young people to be able to learn from other leaders that have come before them. I remember we used to watch, YouTube videos and TED Talks, and debate those and try to see how can we apply those techniques in our own leadership and community journeys. It was like, from the name itself, one thing we're trying to do is that we're trying to teach young people not just to heal but also to become leaders. So every single young person that come into our gathering, we ask them to go back to their communities as peace ambassadors. And it was just creating a big vibrant network of young people that are so passionate about peace building and leadership, and they want to go out there and become leaders in their communities.
Okay, and that's interesting. And what about SheLeads Kakuma? What is your significance and essence of empowering young women in those settings?
Yeah, I think SheLeads Kakuma came in about because of my own personal experiences of becoming a leader in Kakuma. Okay. I used to go to many community gatherings and meetings and workshops, that different international organizations were organizing in Kakuma Refugee Camp, that community group were organizing. And you can just see when you walk into the room, there are like very few young women and girls participating. When you walk into a classroom, you will see, in let's say lower classes, let's say in primary school, there are more girls. But when it gets, to higher educations, like, let's say post-primary education, like, second education, there are less girls. And I realized that in Kakuma, many communities, they come from very patriarchal backgrounds. And there's so many barriers that young women and girls were facing in the refugee camp that were preventing them from taking advantage of either educational or community opportunities. And that's how SheLeads Kakuma came about. How do we just try to address gender inequalities in Kakuma Refugee Camp, but actually first empower young women and girls as advocates and leaders and work with them to address those barriers, working very closely with UN authorities in Kakuma, with the local authorities, with international organizations, with community group, women group, community elders, to try to see what are the barriers that young women face in communities in the refugee camp. And how do we, bridge those barriers by working together with them as allies, as advocates. So it's just creating that powerful outlet for young women and girls to be able to become leaders and advocates and to try to support them in promoting gender equality in the refugee camp.
And in that same spirit, I want to ask you, why is it important for males to champion for young women, especially in Kakuma camp?
Yeah, I think it's very important because whenever we look at gender equality, there's no gender equality without men being part of that entire process. I think men can become powerful allies in promoting gender equality. And one thing we do is, for example, I remember when we started our game and sport activities, there are many young women and girls that would come and say, my brother could not allow me to come and play, or my dad could not allow me, to go to an activity past this time. And we're like, okay, we have to really, promote gender equality. That's to mean involving men, as allies, as people who can also learn and learn at the same time. So I believe, it's really very essential for men to become part of, the entire gender equality movement, to become allies, and, to ensure that young women and girls have a safe space to be able to grow and become leaders.
Okay, that's good. And that's powerful. I hope a lot of young men, and I think that's another question. Are there other young men in the camp that are also championing or holding hands with the women?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So gender equality in Kakuma Refugee Camp is now being mainstreamed into most development projects. Many organizations, always design project with a feminist lens or with, a gender lens, and that means, many men are being involved in, becoming part of that entire process, from, eradicating gender-based violence, to harmful cultural practices and gender biases. So there are many men in Kakuma Refugee Camp that are part of the movement, which I think is inspiring.
Fantastic. Yeah. I want us to go into the role of education and social entrepreneurship. So how do you see education as a tool for refugee building better futures in Africa?
Yeah, it's a very, very powerful tool. I think education is more than just, being able to learn and get a college degree and being able to work and earn living. I think education allows you to become, a very, productive person, just as an individual in your family, but also in the entire community. They always say education transforms a society. And it transforms society by transforming people, and those people go and transform others. So whenever I look at education for refugees, it's like second citizenship. For example, for me, education has opened so many doors. I've been to so many tables because of education. It allows you to be able to become the best version of yourself. It allows you to be able to earn a living, and to be able, to achieve your dreams. And for refugees, especially, being able to leave your countries, the whole of you have of making it alive is always through education. Through education, you have access to opportunities outside the refugee camp. Through education, and you're able to travel the world. Through education, you're able, to become a leader in your community.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, even for me, I would say the same thing. Education has made such a big difference in my life, and I come from a marginalized community as well, so I love how you've put that together. And when we go into social entrepreneurship and innovation, right, how does that play a role in challenging the different problems and changing them?
It play a key role because I feel like the problem we face today are very dynamic. They're changing regularly. We need to adapt new solutions to them. We need to use technology, to help in addressing those, problems. And honestly, the social entrepreneurship mindset very, very crucial, because at the same time, as much as young people should play a key role in trying to address challenges, I believe, their personal development should be a key. And I think with entrepreneurship, you always ask yourself, what are the challenges in my community and what can I do to address them? But also, how do I do that in a way that allow me, for example, to be able to earn a living, right? So with the social entrepreneurship training we offer to young people in the refugee camp is that, what are the challenges you see in your community and how can you get paid for those? Okay. What can you do, for example, on climate change? There are many young people now that are working on, plastic recycling, for example. So at the same time as you're trying to address a challenge, you're also, trying to earn a living as well. So I think it's a very important mindset to have. And innovation at the same time as well is sort of, looking at, what are the new tools and technology you can use every single day to be able to innovate as challenges, change and ensure that, you can, take advantage of those tools to be able to address those challenges and help, transform your community.
Yeah. And speaking of challenges, so I know that you're currently working on Kakuma Leadership Innovation Center.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a bit about the project and your vision?
Yeah. My vision, I think it's come back from when I started my community work long time ago. It's all about, creating a powerful and safe space for young people to be able to heal, to connect, and to innovate solutions for challenges facing them in their communities. So Kakuma Leadership will be a community-led hub. It will have a training center within the center. It will have an innovation hub with laptops and high-speed internet connectivity for young people to be able to access the internet, either to do research, to network, or even to take advantage of online job opportunities. We're going to have our offices there. We're going to have a creative, studio, where young people can learn new tools and be able to, use technology to be able to grow professionally, but also in trying to find innovative solution to challenges facing them. So I see it as, a powerful community center where young people in the refugee camp will be able to come together, connect with each other and connect with the world. I see it more than just a community center in Kakuma. I see it as a hub that will connect Kakuma to the world, but also connect the world to Kakuma. Many young people in Kakuma Refugee Camp are so talented, and I believe if they have exposure to opportunities out there, they can grow professionally and be able to achieve their dreams.
Yeah, and what about healing?
Yeah, healing is very important because, the challenges you face in the refugee camp is so traumatic. Actually some of our component, some component of our training program that we run at the Refugees Peace Ambassadors, include, trauma healing aspect. So, mental health is very important for young people. And even the game and sport activities that we run, they are powerful spaces for young people to be able, to just go to a field and be happy for a second. So, trauma healing is very key to that entire process. You cannot really achieve your dreams until when you have a very powerful mindset and you're in a good mental state. And I think it's always very important to have that, integrated into all component of programming, especially in refugee context where the challenges are very traumatic and affect your psychological.
Yeah, and I think that's very important because I always tell people that in order for us to create a better Africa, for us to create a better world generally, we have to integrate every single person. And we also have to include mental health because if we are not mentally healthy, then there's a lot of things that we can't do. So I really commend you on that. And I know that I was supposed to come to Kakuma and I hope I'm going to come.
For sure, we have to make it work.
And I want us to go into your global advocacy and recognition. Nhial won a global student prize in 2023. Maybe you can tell us about that before I come to talking about what I want to ask.
Yeah, sure. So, thank you again. So the Global Student Prize is one annual award given to young person that have made a significant difference in their community. Last year I was selected, to receive the award. And it's basically, give you a grant of 100,000 USD that you can use, to continue your community work.
That's nice. That's nice. So what does that mean for Nhial?
Community.
Yeah.
Whenever I think of all these accolades, sometimes I feel like in many ways they're used for personal branding, which is okay. People can promote themselves. But I think a big part of it is community. I don't think I would be able to get the Global Student Prize without the community I work with at Kakuma Refugee Camp. All the volunteers, the partners, the community members that put in so much efforts to be able to achieve all that we've achieved. So whenever I look at all this global recognition, it's communities, the young people in Kakuma Refugee Camp that work hard every single day without being paid. That volunteer their time and their expertise. Let's tell people I'm a product of a community, and we're all product of communities, especially, when you look at it from an African perspective. Community is like part of you. There's no Nhial without a community, and there's no Nadia without a community. So whenever I look at all these accolades, it's the community that I come from and that I work with every single day to do that all that I'm doing.
Yeah, and that's true. I mean, in Africa, and that's why there's Ubuntu. I am because
exactly,
you are, and you are because I am.
Yeah.
And how has your advocacy work, especially for refugees, peace, gender equality, evolved now that you're studying in Canada?
I think, a big part of it has been that, given that now I'm based in Canada, I have access to more, global platform. And one thing I asked myself many years ago when I was taking the move is that, do I just go to school and, forget about everything I was doing and move on to a different stage of my life? Or do I actually take advantage of those platforms to be able to create awareness about the challenges that young people face in Kakuma Refugee Camp, but not just in Kakuma Refugee Camp, in other refugee camps around the region. In Kenya, for example, I've been, to the TAPH Refugee Camp. I've been to refugee camps in Uganda. I've been to refugee camp in Malawi, in Rwanda. I've interacted with young people in refugee camp all around the world, from Jordan to Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh. And, it's the same thing. When the young people, they say they need access to quality education, not just refugees, but even young people, in different marginalized communities. For example, around Kenya, when you talk to young people, let's say, in marginalized community, be it in the coast, be it in northeastern Kenya, be it in northwestern Kenya, in Turkana, for example, where Kakuma Refugee Camp is situated, they always said, access to education is the first thing. But beyond education, we need to ask ourselves, what is next? Young people need access to job opportunities. They need access to entrepreneurship opportunities, be it access to capital to be able to start a business and things like that. So I think that is what I try to do with all the global platform I have, not just to speak about my own experience, but to try to bring the voices of my community, try to bring in the voices of other young refugees that will not, otherwise have access to that platform, but also to try to empower their voices as well, to have access, something I've been trying to do the last 1 year, is asking myself, instead of going to this conference, is there another young person I can nominate who can go and share their stories and their work and their voice? Because, I think one thing that happened a lot in the global advocacy space is that there's too much branding where, there's Nhial, and Nhial is the voice of the refugees. And it's a notion I don't agree with, because every single refugee I interact with have a very unique experience, and personal story to share. And I think those stories should also have access to those global platform. So it's one thing is about, trying to create awareness on those, spaces, being able to engage with leaders and partners and allies and advocates, but at the same time trying to bring in the voices of my community, that are young people around the continent that often do not have access to those platforms.
Yeah, and I'm curious, you've mentioned that you've gone to all these other refugee camps. What do you feel? And what happens to you when you visit these other places? As you, I'm more interested in that. Personal.
It's a lot, every single part of those visit is always a very emotional visit. It's like, I always tell people whenever I go to refugee camp, I truly feel human, because, I was in that very same spot not so long ago. My family still live in the refugee camp. Most of my friends still live in refugee camps. And oftentimes, many young people that you will interact with in the refugee camp, they'll tell you, many of them feel like, the world has put them in these remote places and forget about their existence. And, just having that opportunity to be able to have their voices heard on a global platform is very powerful for them. And for me, I think whenever I go to those refugee camps, it's like a learning for myself. But also, as I mentioned, it's like a very emotional moment for me too. But a big part of it is being able to learn. As I mentioned, my experiences, growing up in the Kakuma Refugee Camp are not the same experience with every single young person in Kakuma Refugee Camp or in all these other refugee camps. So this basically gave me an opportunity to be able to learn about different challenges that young people face, to learn about, how all the diverse experiences and identities intersect to create different layers of barriers that they face in the refugee camp. And how do I integrate those to my global advocacy efforts?
That's powerful. That's powerful. And so you're a youth leader, and you're a global change maker as well. So I want you to talk to that young refugee out there. What advice would you give to young leaders in refugee camps or conflict zones who want to make a difference in their community?
It's not easy, and sometimes I feel like many motivational speeches are based on work very hard, right? But sometimes when you go to Kakuma Refugee Camp, it's like, how do you, as a young person, they have to work very hard? What do? They don't have access to enough textbook at the school, or even qualified teachers. They don't have access to, health facilities and things like that. I think what I always tell young people is look around you and ask yourself, are there any tools or resources or opportunities I can take advantage of? As I mentioned, when I was growing up in Kakuma Refugee Camp, my dream was to be a journalist. But, after I graduated from high school, I did not have access to a college, to a college right away. So what I did, for example, is ask myself, are there any tools that I can take advantage of to continue my dream? And there was a library that I used to go to read a lot and be able to perfect my English. There was a training program that was offered for young people that are passionate about writing and storytelling. And I took advantage of those opportunities. And I think for young people that are based in these challenges, situation is asking themselves, are there any opportunities around me that I can take advantage of? Do I have access, for example, to a smartphone that I can even use to learn online? I think the key is first, developing yourself as a person. And then the next part of that will be, your community. You cannot really give a lot to your community until you give to yourself first.
Indeed. You have to work first. And how do you envision a future for youth leadership, especially for marginalized groups?
I think whenever I look at youth leadership, I think it's very key to building a better world. And one of the arguments that I put out there whenever I interact with world leaders on a global platform is that, it's time for them to pass the baton to young people. Young people no longer need to just be in this youth advisory board. Every single organization today has like a youth advisory board. We need to lead those organizations. It's time for us to become CEOs. It's time for us to become ministers. It's time for us to run for office and become MPs and even, run for presidents. There's now a trend, where the young people around the world that are, going out there and running for offices, which I think it's inspiring. And I think for me, I see youth leadership as the key. I think we are one of the most, talented and innovative, generation of all generations. We have the skills, we have the resilience, we have the determination it takes, to build a better world out there for everyone. And I think we're also very inclusive. I've never, our generation is so connected. Sometimes I talk to young people, let's say in Cote d'Ivoire, a refugee come in Bangladesh, and they told me, oh, I know about this, I know about that, I know about it. They're so well connected with the world. And I think that, connection helps young people to be able to ensure that every single space is inclusive of young people in all their diversities. And I think, I see, the future of youth leadership being able to see young people no longer, being just consulted or being an advisory board, but actually leading.
Yeah, that's true. And what are your future plans, both in terms of your education and your work with refugees?
Yeah, I think, a big part of my future plan is being able to ensure that I empower young people to lead. All these initiatives I started, for example, right now, I do not play a key role in leading them. There are many young people that I work with, on day-to-day basis that do the day-to-day running of these initiatives. And, for me right now, a key on my education goals is being able, to complete my undergraduate degree. I'm hoping to proceed to a master's degree right after that. And I'm also planning to make a transition, from international development and humanitarian, work to more of, corporate social responsibility. where I feel like, the opportunities to actually be able to move the needle on these issues, be it ensuring that youth-led organizations have access to funding, that, corporation, can invest in social impact initiative, and that, there's a localization agenda out of it all.
Okay, cool. And how can young people, even in challenging circumstances, right, contribute to building a more peaceful and just society?
Yeah, I think it starts at the community level. It's all about asking yourself, is there anything I can do in my community to promote peace? And I'll ask young people that every single community today that you go to, for example, in Nairobi, I've been to Mathare, I've been to Kibra, and I interact with young people there that are on initiatives. It's like there's so many incredible youth-led initiatives out there that you can contribute to. So ask yourself as a young person in my community, is there a young person doing this initiative? Is there this community organization that I know about that I can volunteer my time and my efforts to? I think it started at the society and the community level, and that, it'll, go, to the national level, it goes to the regional level, and it goes to a global level. Whenever I look at all these global goals from the Sustainable Development Goals, I don't think there's anything global in them without the local aspect of it. I feel like it's many local visions brought together that achieve a global peaceful world. So I think, it starts at the local level. So it's asking yourself, what can I do at the local level to promote peace?
Nice. And if you could speak to, our audience, whoever it is that is listening, what would you be your parting shot, especially under this theme where we're talking about education and refugees? Because I do know that there's usually a disconnect as well. A lot of people don't understand. It's like what you said, it's like a textbook. This is what it is. But what is your parting shot to really demystify what people think about refugees and especially young people in Africa?
I think we try to look at young people and refugees from more of an outside lens. We try to look at them, from textbook experience. We try to look at them from the pro we read. But I think one thing I'll tell people is that, if you want to learn about the issues and the challenges and the ambition of young people and young refugees, in that case, talk to them, be able to learn from them and give them an opportunity to lead. So I think, education is a very powerful tool for young people and young refugees to be able, to grow as leaders and advocate in their communities. So having access to education, I think, is something that everyone must prioritize out there. But also ensuring that young people do not just have access to education, they have access to job opportunities, they have access to a service space where they can feel they can contribute to policy discussions and decision-making processes, and, to be able to lead and become leaders in their community and also in the world.
Nice. And is there anything else you'd like to add, or maybe make a call out for something?
I think a big part of it is just listen. I think we need to do more listening than talking, especially when we try to envision solutions for communities that are marginalized, that are underserved, that are underrepresented, and that are excluded. I think the key is just listen and give those communities a safe space to be able to share their ideas, to share their experiences, to share their stories, to share their voices, and to be able to grow and to be able to lead.
So thank you so much, Nhial. I think you have shared your personal story, and I'm motivated. I have learned a lot. I know I've told you this before. I have to come to Kakuma, so
we have to make it work.
But I think your dedication towards social justice and peace building, especially for refugees, is beyond inspiring.
Thank you.
I would definitely want you to keep going on, keep breaking those biases. So thank you very much for coming on. I just want to say thank you to everyone who is watching this or listening to this. I think, and I do believe Nhial's experience is very inspiring. It's truly, truly motivating, and it's actually demystified and made us learn more about refugees, about the situation. And he said something. He said that we need to go beyond the textbook. We need to listen more rather than speak, and we need to give them opportunities to do more, be more, and literally open up beyond what we believe any one of them can do. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
I look forward to seeing more of your work.
Thank you.
And make sure you tune in to the Africa Power Hour. And remember, as you watch and as you listen, take a thing or two and always inspire someone around you, because the Pan-African space is a huge space for all of us to learn, to grow, and to really transform what Africa is and make it what we want it to be. Till next time.